Yes, I think when we presented Legion, when we crafted it, I think we set out to, as always, build an epic experience, build a world that really was going to, feel immersive, engaging, exciting, epic, but also to keep it going. I think that was one of the big things that we learned from Warlords, that it's not just about the first part of an expansion, but really what tells the story of an expansion is how it continues, how the patches unfold. And so we really strove to deliver a steady stream of content throughout Legion, really building upon, a living world that was changing and evolving around players and telling the story thoroughly. And so from, Karazhan in patch 7.1 to adding, side features like micro holidays and expanded time walking in 7.15, eventually going to the Tomb of Sargeras in 7.2, 7.25, the Broken Shore, and now finally Argus. We feel like, this has been a long, well-told story that's been building to this very moment, as we finally head to the homeworld of the Legion, birthplace of the Eridar, the Draenei, where we can fight our greatest foe, also learn a lot more about some of the underpinnings of Warcraft lore.
Yeah, I mean, like Ian said, one of the most exciting things about Legion, and I feel like we've been really trying to pay it off, is just that living, breathing world aspect, right? Like telling the story through the world even. It's this beautiful, Azeroth and the Broken Isles are this beautiful location that has been changing throughout the course of Legion. Like just a few weeks ago, we saw Argus appear in the skybox, and the validated Doomsayers showed back up in Dalaran, and we're talking about things that you were hearing at the beginning of Legion with the Legion invasions that were happening. So just really driving home the story and the breathing world that is Azeroth has been such a huge philosophy for us, and I think it's been fantastic, and it's been really great hearing the player feedback around it too. Like just seeing the community light up with screenshots of Argus in their skybox and people talking about their wallpapers that they've been, oh, check out my new wallpaper, like it's just been really, really exciting to see that reaction from players.
I mean, so in terms of help from other departments, I think we've, certainly, we ask a lot of our QA teams to test all the content that we make, and the more content we make, the busier we keep them. We've gotten incredible support from our in-game cinematics crew, so huge shout out to Taryn Gregory and the supporting cast that, works to make the in-game cinematics that create some of the most epic and memorable moments of the Legion experience. But I think the way we've done this is more a matter of planning and prioritization. I think we set out to deliver a stream of patches, alternating large and smaller patches, as we explained at BlizzCon last fall. And that was a plan that I think the whole team rallied behind, and we've been able to execute, and we're very satisfied and happy with how that's gone so far. I think there were times in the past where we focused on sort of the gap between expansions, on how long it took to get the next expansion out, and often could at times prioritize reducing that number at the expense of new content for players playing the existing game. Whereas in Legion, in supporting Legion, our number one priority was always minimizing the amount of time players have to wait before they get new content in whatever form that may come, whether it's a new patch, whether it's a new raid unlocking, whether it's the next expansion. And I think that approach and really focusing behind it have led to a fantastic first year for Legion. Well, so the Taurus, the Burning Throne raid is not opening up until later in the year. We recognize that from a raid perspective, there are many players, many players who are still working their way through Tomb of Sargeras. A new raid zone would be very premature. But new outdoor content, well, people have been in Broken Shore since March. And it is time for a change of pace. It is time for a new setting. And this advances the story. This picks up where Tomb of Sargeras left off. It's very similar to how we treated Nighthold going into patch 7.2, where players went to the Broken Shore, they learned about what was coming next, they got some more power, they continued raiding Nighthold for a while, and then eventually Tomb opened up. So I think that by the time the story comes to its end, the pacing will have felt right for all types of players. And I think that's something we're trying to keep in mind with how we time the release of our content. It's players who are focused in the outdoor world, who want new story, want new spaces to explore, they're ready for that. Raiders, are not quite ready for something yet, so we're not going to force it on them. Well, I think arguably it's been 2.5 expansions. I mean, I think we started this fight back in Burning Crusade, right? We defeated Kil'jaeden once there. We fought a number of very powerful Legion lieutenants throughout that expansion and, pushed them back. In the second half of Warlords of Draenor, the Legion was a great foe, right? Empowering through Gul'dan's actions and what we saw with sort of the Fel Iron Horde and ultimately toppling Archimonde himself. And so it's been a long time coming. I think, we've won victories along the way. We've suffered setbacks. And the story of Legion has been one of building an army, building a force that was capable of standing up to them, of building up order halls, of recruiting champions, of getting artifact weapons, of empowering those artifact weapons, of forging new alliances, working together, getting the Pillars of Creation, and doing it one step at a time. And I think the turnaround that we suffered at the loss at the Broken Shore, turning it around to push them all the way back to the tomb, and now it all hangs in the balance in Argus. I think that's a reasonable way for the story to have gone, given the overall pacing.
Like In just mentioned, just to iterate on that a little bit more, one of the cool locations in Argus is a location called Macquarie, which we were actually introduced to in the Burning Legion with the Eridar, the arrival of the Eridar in the Exodar when they crash landed. We're going to go back to that location and even see it in a dungeon called the Seat of the Triumvirate, where that was the location where Archimonde, Kil'jaeden, Velen ruled the Eridar people. So that story started a long time ago, back in 2007. So this patch and even Legion as a whole is really about the culmination of that story that started so long ago. And we're ready to fight them back at this point and send them down the road. So.
So I'm sorry you feel that way. I think it's so much larger. I think that's part of the challenge. When we were building Icecrown Citadel 10 years ago, Icecrown Citadel, it's a scourge structure, but under it all, the Lich King was also once a human. And it has things about it that feel human in scale. It was built like a recognizable citadel with, great walls and gates and stairs and so forth. And Taurus it's the stronghold of almost an entire civilization, right? It's not the seat of one person, one ruler. This is the Legion's base, where they do everything from coordinating their attacks in other worlds to training and creating new beasts to, corrupting the world soul of the planet itself. It's a sprawling complex that we actually, once we're within it, we actually even use a ship to travel from section to section. We need the Vindicar to move even throughout the raid because it's so large. And so I think that makes it less approachable, but that's, I think, part of the intent. I think it's more of it's this alien superstructure as opposed to the villain's castle. And Icecrown Citadel was the perfect expression of the villain's castle, but that's not what we were going for really with Antorus.
Like Ian mentioned, the true seat of power isn't even at in the Antoran Waste. As you progress in the raid, you see the Dark Titan architecture as you go further. If you've seen the Dark Titan Agrimar, when you fight him, you're at the core of the planet. As you progress deeper in the raid, that's really what we're trying to sell with the story, is the progression of that. Also, I would next time you log in and check it out, I would recommend if you look up and even sometimes down, you can see the river of Fel that's beneath you. That's really the place where we're going, is almost down, not in front of us. So in front of us is cool, but even looking behind you and down, that's the goal, is we're going to the planet's core, and that's where the seat of the Dark Pantheon sits.
It's a cool sounding name. I mean, honestly, it's yeah. the answer for the two are the same thing. It's not a retcon. It's not that the Titans are still around in their old form. Yes, if you were fighting Agrimar himself, you would have no chance. He would step on you, and that would be the end of the fight, or you might tank his toe. But what we've seen is there were remnants of the power of the Titans, these remnants of the Titan souls. And Sargeras has been using these as a power source. He's been manipulating them in some ways, as we learn, as we venture deeper into the raid. And so the Agrimar that you fight is essentially the corrupted remaining soul of Agrimar infused into this avatar body. It's not the Agrimar that we knew as a Titan, because the Agrimar that we knew as a Titan, he wouldn't be fighting you. He wasn't a friend of Sargeras. He wasn't an ally of Sargeras in that way. So I think that's sort of how the whole thing fits together. And I think as players play through the raid, which really they haven't had a chance to do, because on the public test realm, we've only done small sections of it one at a time. All the various roleplay events and some other cinematics that help link it all together aren't enabled for that testing. It should all make sense. So, a lot of what we see in Argus, there actually isn't necessarily a direct relationship in this case. The Macquarie area, where the Void is really most present, is designed story-wise and also just visually to be a bit of a breakup, a bit of a change of pace from very Legion-heavy atmosphere, very green and black fell and fighting demons. You need to go in there to get a powerful relic that will help you in your fight against the Legion. But as you're doing that, you're learning more about the Eridar civilization that has fallen, and you're also seeing a reminder of what happens, what we learned in the Sunwell with Entropius and Muru, when Anaru falls into darkness, and it can become a very powerful source of void that radiates and corrupts everything around it in a different sort of way. And they're not working for the Legion or with the Legion, but they're very dangerous and standing in our path in front of an object that we need very much. Well, so I mean, we do have the Mythic Dungeon Invitational coming up very soon. The qualifiers just finished on the live servers, and there'll be an online streamed event as the top 8 teams from each region compete in the most challenging Mythic Keystone dungeons for a significant prize pool. I believe it's a $100,000 prize pool. So that's, I think, an interesting experiment in competitive PvE in that sense, and something we're looking to explore more, looking forward to seeing how it goes. If you're talking about the World First race specifically, I think it's interesting. You mentioned it takes so much time and so much dedication, and it does. But it didn't always used to, and it's almost been a self-perpetuating thing as each tier, each expansion, guilds go to greater and greater measures to try to one-up each other. And there's a point at which it's maybe honestly not the healthiest thing for the game. And so we look at that scene and ask ourselves, is taking a week and a half off from work and playing 14 hours a day, is that what World of Warcraft should be about? Is that the thing we actually want to encourage and reward? Do we want to push people to do that even harder for greater prizes? Do we feel like the terms of that competition are actually, as they stand now, a fair one, with different regions getting different access, getting the patch on different days, inequality in PTR access and testing, all these other things. And so I appreciate the desire to feel rewarded, because there's no question that the top raiders in the world, they are doing incredible things. They're capable of incredible coordination, incredible skill, and great kudos to them. It's been very interesting to watch. I think more guilds at the top start to stream some of their progress. I think in Tomb of Sargeras, we actually saw the Chinese guild Alpha, I think for one of the very first times ever, be streaming progress on a boss that no one in the world had killed yet, and we could see all the viewers that they got. It gave people some insight into what goes on there. But for us to formalize that as a race with a prize that we offer and we declare, I think we would need to, change so many things about the system in a way that I'm not sure would improve it for the average player, for even the average Mythic player who's just trying to get in and raid. Does it mean that we don't do any hotfixes, that we don't hotfix any bugs or any imbalance problems? because it might unfairly benefit one guild over another in a world where there are large cash prizes at stake? I'm not sure. So it's something, it's a discussion that I'm sure will continue. I don't think that just taking the live server race and giving a prize to the winner is really the right path forward, but definitely open to other suggestions and options from some of the top guilds that might be interested in that sort of avenue. I just haven't seen the proposal yet that really makes sense to me. So the details of this are still being worked out, but the artifact weapons, we've said from the outset that those are a Legion feature. We didn't say we never approached it with the intent of never having players ever again get a new weapon. It's part of building up your class order. It's part of the strong class theming of Legion, but the artifacts will be retired once we move into the next expansion. We do want to allow players to earn any appearances that they earn for their artifacts as permanent transmogs, so that even when you're not wielding Ashbringer anymore, you can still make your weapon look like Ashbringer as a reminder of what you earned if you like the look or whatever. Only a few of those appearances will likely only be obtainable in Legion, so the Mage Tower challenges or completing a Mythic 15, because those are very skill-based. It's kind of similar to how challenge mode cosmetics worked in the past. You have to do those during the expansion. Others you'll be able to go back and earn, but beyond, obviously we'll have a lot more to talk about in detail when we're getting into, future content, but players will not be still wielding their Ashbringer or their Doomhammer, years down the line. I think it depends. I mean, the locations are still going to exist the same way your garrison still exists in Warlords. People will still visit them. They're still very cool class spaces. Obviously, for some classes like Death Knights, they've always had that. They're still going to have Acheris. That's nothing changing there. But in terms of how they, figure into the story going forward, it depends. Whenever we want to tell a class-based story, we have a great vehicle for doing it. But not every story will be like that. I certainly think so and hope so. I mean, I think no two expansions are the same. You're always looking at what is the package of features, what's the place we're going to go to, what's the right fit for the story we want to tell, and what players are looking for to do next. And Legion was amazing, and we know that we have our work cut out for us when it comes to equaling and indeed surpassing that mark, but we have an incredibly talented development team and all the right people to do it.
World bosses are a fun one. We had a return of world bosses in a really big way. You do them every week, and we made a bunch of them. I think we made more world bosses for Legion than we have, I think, for any expansion in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong. We had 10 at ship, and we have just continued to add them. We actually are doing additional world bosses in patch 7.3. One of the features that Ian mentioned was the invasion points, where you can go into an invasion point and you get sent off to a planet that the Legion are currently invading, and you try to fight that off with Illidan and the Illidari. That's actually where you'll encounter the world, what would be our Argus world bosses. They're a bit of an experiment in that they will potentially be more difficult than the current ones, because we're capping the number of people that you can go fight them with, right? Well, right now you could hit a world boss with a significant amount of people because he's sitting out there. Brutalis is just coming out of the front gates of the Tomb of Sargeras. Anyone who's around can group up and join him, whereas the invasion points will be a smaller number of people to attack them. As far as really difficult world bosses, it's hard in the era of WoW to really execute that correctly. There's a lot of challenges there. Like if you remember back in the day, there was Azure Ghosts that if you got near them after you died, you got stunned for like a minute and a half or something like that. Like you just couldn't act for a while. I don't know if we introduced that today, that we'd receive a lot of positive feedback about that. It's a hard problem to solve. I think we have a lot of vehicles, a lot of methods to explore challenging content. One of the things that we've talked about recently is, the difficulty, LFR difficulty, looking for raid. We are still kind of feeling out its place in World of Warcraft, and I think one of the things that we're going to strive to do, especially in Antorus, is actually having, I wouldn't want to call it increasing the difficulty of it, but having mechanics that people will once again feel like, okay, cool, I have to understand this, I have to learn this, and maybe that even helps them get into a normal mode raid later. When they come into it from normal, they say, oh, okay, cool, I just did this on LFR. I actually learned a few things from this, rather than just it being, a mode where, you can ignore things and not have to pay any attention to it.
It's an interesting idea. I think we're happy with, definitely happy with Black Temple Time Walking and how that turned out. It's something we want to continue to expand upon. I think in an ideal world, there's some point in the future where every time it's Time Walking Week, there's at least a raid associated with that expansion for players to visit. And Ulduar is a much beloved raid. The Dreadlord ultimately is just an Athrosime, right? They're a race, and most of them join the Legion the same way. If you had never before seen anyone but Kil'jaeden and Archimonde and Eridar sorcerers, then you met Velen, you might ask yourself, how can there be a good Eridar? How is that possible? Not everyone makes the same decisions.